Hey everybody, Tony D with an early morning lamp video. I was lying in bed thinking about the whole Powell thing, and it's very interesting. I mean, the whole thing is just Powell said it best when she said the information coming in is like a fire hose. So what we know at this point, right? Powell was never officially on the Trump team, but for some reason, the Trump team, aligned with her and let her come to the press conference. Was that a mistake? In retrospect, it seems like it was bad optics to not sort of point out that, oh, and we also have Sidney Powell too. I guess it was to lend her credibility to some extent, although I don't think she needs credibility. I think she's a credible person. But her claims are pretty big. Come on, you got to admit the claims are huge. Now, do I believe the claims? I believe a good deal of them. I mean, I think the Dominion voting software, number one, Dominion was part of the whole Venezuelan Smartmatic thing. I mean, that's a fact. And it was founded in Venezuela by Venezuelan guys. The idea that it wasn't used to fix the election in Venezuela is ludicrous. Of course it was. That's what they do in that country and in all socialist countries. So it makes total sense that, and we have some evidence that there were glitches in the system that flipped votes to Biden from Trump. So the issue is, can Powell prove all this? That's the real issue. Can she prove it all? She says she has the proof. She says she has an affidavit from a guy who witnessed it, at least in Venezuela. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean she'll bring it here, bring the lawsuit, and they'll go, yeah, this is undeniable proof. Let's flip over the election. I don't know. I do think there are a lot of people who are in trouble. I think at the very least, Powell should be able to prove that some people in some elections, possibly in Georgia, were able to flip it. And that the implication will then be from one lawsuit that, well, if it's true on this small scale, we have to now have a massive investigation into the entire election. Now, I said in the beginning, I don't think there's enough time to do all this. So Trump knows that, and he has to get to SCOTUS in order to make this a win. I think Sidney probably has tons of information, but I don't think she can, I don't think she'll be able to prove her case nationally. Maybe she'll be able to prove her case in one particular area, but I don't think she'll be able to prove her case on a national scale in a week. She says she's ready to go in a week. I don't know if I believe that. If Trump, gets the SCOTUS before then, it may be irrelevant anyway to Trump getting back into office, because I've contended that the goal is for Trump to get to SCOTUS and then get them to either rule in his favor in a bunch of cases or just say, hey, throw it to the delegates. That seems fair. Void the whole election and throw it to the delegates, because from their perspective, it would relieve the pressure off of SCOTUS. You couldn't say, well, SCOTUS gave the election to Trump just because he appointed them. No, you couldn't say that, because they followed the Constitution saying, well, the election, there's a lot of irregularities here. We can't account for them. We don't know if it's been rigged, but it's clear that enough malfeasance is widespread that we cannot trust the results. Therefore, the only way we can make sure it's a fair election is to throw it to the delegates. That's the way I see it. Now, and so you've got essentially two legal pathways. Either it gets to SCOTUS, well, three really. Either the lower courts rule in Trump's favor and he never even has to go to SCOTUS, which seems unlikely. And then he gets to SCOTUS and they rule Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and whatever other states court cases get there. And each time SCOTUS rules in his favor, or enough that he gets the vote, or, like I said, they throw it to the delegates. Now, where's that leave Sidney Powell? I think she'll probably be doing this lawsuit and investigation for the next, 2 years at least. And people are saying, where's the FBI on this? Where are our investigators? Now, some of you said in the comments, and Tim Pool said this morning too, so good on you for picking this up, that part of the strategy is that if Powell wasn't there or was part of the Trump team would get sued by Dominion, and that would be a distraction going forward to their other lawsuits, and they don't want that. So part of this is to separate Powell and get Dominion on its heels, so it's not going to fight with Powell and the Trump team simultaneously. It'll be too much. Although they are sort of fighting back in the PR war. Suddenly Dominion's going on talk shows and being treated like, oh, we're the good guys here. We count the votes. Whereas, 15 years ago, the same people were doing investigative reports on Dominion, and did it change the election? And there's a lot of malfeasance here. So there's nothing new about the idea that the voting system is completely effed in this country in terms of electronics. They did stories about this, and the most hilarious take was, I guess a year ago, John Oliver did a take on Dominion voting systems in 2019. And I think he mentioned the 2006 documentary too. And, he did a whole shtick about how our election system, is easily broken into, how someone broke into a voting system with a pen, and, you could easily get into one of these systems and rig it if you know what you're doing. Then, as Tim Pool reports, last week tonight, put out a Twitter thread explaining why you should kind of ignore that or how you should interpret that as not being a support for, say, all the crazy stuff, quote unquote, that Sidney Powell is saying. Yeah, that's how desperate these people are. They're willing to go back and reinterpret their own stuff to say, yeah, no, don't ignore that. Ignore that or think about it in this way only. So look, I totally think there's big shenanigans going on with the voting system. Do I think they flipped votes for Biden? Absolutely. I don't know if they flipped enough, though. We don't know that. The smart thing to do, and keep in mind that a lot of these guys are clever by half who do this kind of stuff. So imagine you want to rig the election or flip the election, or you've got a bunch of fail-safes. So you can't just rely on one. So you got to have multiple, right? So you got to we'll have mail-in ballots come in from this source. We'll flip some of the votes using Dominion. We'll ballot harvest here. And, it's like a bunch of different people who don't know about the others. Right? On top of the fact, you just had a base of support for Biden who so hate Trump, they're willing to do stuff on their own. And some of these people probably act independently too. It doesn't take a lot to push in this climate a bunch of anti-Trumpers. Hey, you'll have total control over the polling place. Total control. You can decide where the observers stand. Did you know that? And by the way, the back doors will be wide open. Wide open. And if you need any extra help and you have some assistance helping you with ballots, feel free to let them write it. Now, we've already heard reports of things like the observers were telling people to either fill in the extra stuff or ignore certain things on ballots, but only for Biden. At the same time, they were rigorously looking at the Trump ballots and deciding, well, this doesn't look right, boom, in the trash. So that kind of stuff, I don't even think they need to put out a directive. I think that was going to happen in heavily Democratic districts where the Democrats controlled, the voting area. So like in Detroit and Philly and probably in New York and all the big cities where Democrats essentially rule, where the system would have had plenty of Democrats and the Republicans would have been begging people to be observers. I mean, that's just the way it is in those areas. So I think Powell's lawsuits will eventually come to light. It's possible this could all be, Powell was just all designed to be one big distraction, and that she was willing to take the hit on her reputation to help the president. I mean, if the president came up with that plan and you support the president, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you participate and say, yeah, I'll say some crazy things. Don't you worry. I'll get the media to attack me. It's not outside the realm of possibility when you have a president who knows how to manage optics. If that's part of his plan, if it was part of his plan to get the media to look over there while he's doing something over here, yeah. I don't know if it was a good idea though. Maybe it was. Sticks and Hammers saying that the hair dye thing was part of the plan too. I guess it could be. I don't know. I'm just speculating at this point. I mean, it is nuts out there. It is nuts. I can't wait for the next revelation. I can't wait. I mean, just so much stuff comes out. Oh, and finally, the German raid. I don't know. That is, I got to say, it's sounding less and less likely that it even happened. I don't know why it came out. It must have been based on something. So maybe my initial take was right, that it was based on the NATO raid that happened in Germany in July. And that was about the dark web and whatever. Maybe. Or maybe, until we have somebody come out and say definitively from either the army or the German government or someone that says, yes, this happened. Now, Powell mentioned it. So is she picking up on the rumor? They're saying she's a bit QAnon. And that's sort of code for like, oh, there's all sorts of wackiness going on. I mean, there is a lot of wackiness going on. You have to be wary of that. InfoWars put out a video, and I watched part of it. My friend sent it to me, where they said, talk about your conspiracy theory. So they said that a group of generals got together and they were ready to stage a military coup against Barack Obama. And they sort of reported this semi-seriously. Although, everything that comes out of InfoWars, it's kind of opinion and kind of just ranting. But they said these generals had decided that they had to do a military coup against Barack Obama. But then they talked themselves out of it when they found out Trump was running. And behind the scenes, these generals who are protecting Trump and helping Trump know that he's going to be reelected. They have already gone after, they're on Trump's side, and they're going after the deep state, and everything's going to be perfect. Now, the problem with this, and why I think it's a conspiracy theory, is it's very similar to what leftists say. Leftists have a utopian vision of being able to eliminate all problems for all people everywhere, and solve everything. This is the same kind of rhetoric. So you have to be extremely wary of it. Will Trump win? I still put him at 85% because the SCOTUS could screw him. They could screw him. They could say, I'm sorry, you just don't have enough evidence, or, we decided making you president will tear this country apart. We're better off with Biden. You don't know. You don't know. These guys could flip. They could be bribed, blackmailed behind the scenes. You'll never know about it. And look, and I don't want to jinx anything, but you have to acknowledge the facts. Trump is in his 70s. And God forbid anything happened to him before this process is over and it's done. I don't think it will. I certainly don't want to see that. But a lot can happen in the next month or so. I think he's on track to win. I think he will get the SCOTUS. SCOTUS will rule in his favor either way, and it's a win. And then we will hear the many, many, many tears. Now, all this other stuff with Powell, I think it'll still go on, and I think it'll be buried. And a year and a half from now, you'll hear some story about how the Georgia electoral board now has to get rid of all the Dominion voting machines, has to go back to paper ballots or some such nonsense, and now has a bunch of very stringent rules for mail-in voting and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And it'll all be very boring. It'll be a tiny mention in somewhere in the news, and you'll see it on CNN, like in the ticker, and that'll be it. That'll be it. Georgia loses lawsuit against Sidney Powell. That's it. That's all you'll see from places like CNN or the mainstream media, because it won't be interesting enough for them to cover. And then maybe Kayleigh McElhinney will, is that her name, McElhinney? I don't know how to pronounce her name. The press secretary will mention something at a press conference. Oh, by the way, the reporters will scoff and say, well, it doesn't matter anyway because Trump stole the election and he's not the rightful president. Joe Biden is. And, we'll see where Biden is, a year and a half from now. I don't think he's going to be in a good place, physically. I think he's just, he's deteriorating. He yelled at another reporter, by the way. So when it comes to Sidney Powell and all this, as one of you said, hey, be careful, don't demoralize people. Look, we have to try to look at the truth as best we can. Again, I'm not a reporter, so I just sort of cobble these things together. But we have to try to face the truth as best we can. And, if Trump loses, we face reality with stoicness. What? Damn, I had the word in the comment that I posted. Now I can't remember. Stoic forthrightness. You're just not going to cry about it. You can't be like the leftists. They're a bunch of babies. They're a bunch of babies who are going to cry and whine. We didn't get our way. Oh, Trump is president. Oh, God, no. We're not going to be that way if the worst happens. We're just going to be like, well, the system's corrupt and we need to work harder to uncorrupt it. And we need to work harder in 2022 and 2024. Either way it goes, the Democratic Party is toast.